get started, I'm going to do a brief introduction for us today, and then I'll pass it over to our speaker. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have both non-members and members of the MCHS here with us, joining us virtually. For those of you who don't know us, we are a nonprofit historical membership society in Milwaukee. The mission of the MCHS is to recognize and preserve our local history. In promoting a greater appreciation of Milwaukee County's heritage, the Historical Society hopes to develop a better understanding of the issues and challenges facing Milwaukee County today. The MCHS Museum and Research Center is located on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive in downtown Milwaukee. Through this series, Lunch and Learn, we hope to bring the MCHS to your home by diving into a variety of topics centered on Milwaukee history and culture, or to your workplace, depending if it's your lunch hour. So today's program is Transforming Milwaukee's Menomonee Valley, exploring the history of Milwaukee's Menomonee River Valley neighborhood with Corey Zetts, Executive Director of Menomonee Valley Partners. And my name is Olivia Hoff. I'm the MCHS Programs Manager, and I will be hosting this program. Before we get started, I do want to give a few reminders on using Zoom. So please keep your microphone muted and ensure that we all have a good listening experience. You can mute yourself by clicking the microphone button in the bottom left of your screen. There should be a red slash through your microphone. If you have a question, feel free to write that question in the chat. When writing in the chat, please make sure to select everyone as a recipient. At the end of the program, we will have a question and answer session, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. Also, this program is being recorded for MCHS members and community members who are unable to attend the program. If you do not want your likeness to be recorded, please turn off your camera. For best viewing, please click on the view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and select speaker view. Lastly, if you're having tech issues, please let us know in the chat and I'll help you out. And with that, let me introduce today's speaker. Corey Zetts serves as the Executive Director of the Menomonee Valley Partners, the public-private partnership facilitating the redevelopment of Milwaukee's Menomonee River Valley, a nonprofit with a mission that revitalizes the valley as a thriving urban district that advances economic, ecological, and social equity for the benefit of greater Milwaukee community. Corey has received her MS from Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Wisconsin and lives in Milwaukee with her husband and daughter. So, Corey, with that, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Olivia. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me here today and for being interested in the Menomonee Valley. I just realized that my screen share is disabled. Can you make me a co-host again?
I got you.
Okay. I know we just tried this and it worked before. All right. Here it comes. Can you see that now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for taking the time out of your day to join and hear a little bit about Menomonee Valley Partners and the Menomonee River Valley. So I'm going to fly through a whole lot of history, a whole lot of things happening currently, and then into the future in the valley. And then leave some time for people to ask questions at the end. So apologies if I fly through things. So first, just a little bit of grounding on where the valley is. I think this group probably knows, but we're right here in the heart of the city, right in the middle line. Canal Street is our zero line for Milwaukee street system. And the valley is about 1,200 acres following the Menomonee River. And you probably know the landmarks like the Harley-Davidson Museum, Potawatomi Casino Hotel, American Family Field, kind of bookending the valley. But the history goes back millennia, as the Menomonee Valley was a wild rice marsh. And that's what Menomonee means. It comes from the Algonquin, meaning good grain. And so this entire valley, like a lot of the central corridor of Milwaukee here, was a wild rice marsh. And that is where many tribes from around the region came every year for the wild rice harvest. We have some photos here actually from MCHS at the top of depicting the Potawatomi who were would come for the wild rice harvest. And by the 1800s, the Potawatomi were the primary inhabitants surrounding the valley, up until the Treaty of Chicago, which forced the Potawatomi off of this land. The bottom photo here is the trading cabin that is where the Mitchell Park domes are today. So that's where Solomon Juneau made the first permanent trading post in the region. And so we've always said that the valley's been a great place for commerce for a couple hundred years now. But when Milwaukee was transformed into the machine shop of the world, the valley really was its engine. So you can see here, all this area that was the wild rice marsh was filled. It went from this lush place. If you can picture, if you've been to the Horicon Marsh, like imagine that kind of space where people would get lost in the marsh. And then to this, where the entire river is channelized. There's nothing green down here. It is mostly railroad, coal piles, salt piles, stockyards. This is a more recent aerial image, but there were many canals that cut through the land. So all of the water was channelized, and really for individual industries to have their own private access. But as that marsh was filled in, as industry moved in, really following the railroad, which was the big developer in the 1870s, many other industries followed. So everything that kind of made Milwaukee famous was at some point made down in the valley. So we say, like, from beers to gears was the folk legend here. Started as a brewery and evolved into the wagons and the gears for the carts into these giant gears that they could fit their whole staff inside of one. And the workers for the Milwaukee Road really came from both sides. So the south side of the valley had always been an immigrant neighborhood, different groups over the generations. And the north side became a primarily Black neighborhood. But the Milwaukee Road was really a place where we saw a lot of different communities coming together as a workforce. And for those of you who've grown up in Milwaukee, who've seen the transitions over time, this is what a lot of people think about and remember from the Menomonee Valley. John Gerder always said that Menomonee Valley had used its resources and then crossed the line into abuse. And this is kind of what the legacy of the valley was. It was such a heavy industrial area in a time that there were not environmental regulations. And then in the latter half of the last century, as industry changed and jobs moved to the suburbs, they moved overseas, some industries just collapsed altogether. The valley was left with just a lot of abandonment and blight. So we bled jobs for about 50 years. It's the story of just about every Rust Belt city. This top photo is the Milwaukee Road shops. And so if you lived in Milwaukee from the 80s to the early 2000s, you would have driven by this on I-94. And this was what you saw as you entered the city. Like, welcome to Milwaukee, our industrial blight at our doorstep. And then the other things that were in the valley at this time were things that people didn't want anywhere else in their neighborhoods. So we had a lot of junkyards, car junkyards. It was known for the explosions of crushed cars that still had gas in their tanks. A lot of above ground storage. And the Potawatomi came back in the early 90s to open a bingo hall. Really because this is the only piece of land that the city would give to them. And at that time, the piece of land they had was sandwiched in between the stockyards and the slaughterhouse, with the railroad right at their front door and a coal pile across the street. And then this is the river. It looks like an open sewer. It kind of felt like that. I actually took this photo on my first day in the valley. I mean, there was a lot of just say a lot of potential yet to be realized. And then the other thing that's really important to understand about the valley's history is that it was the dividing line. And just close to 60 years to the anniversary of the 200 nights of fair housing marches across the 16th Street Viaduct. Um, and I just have a couple photos from some of those marches led by the NAACP youth. And every time I see these photos, I'm always struck by just how young some of these kids are. These really are youth. And when you hear the stories of the marchers crossing the bridge and having bricks and bottles thrown at them, I think we don't always picture like 14-year-old girls being the recipients of those, but just the bravery of those who fought and who marched, but also that's not such recent history. We've in recent years lost some of those marchers who were still very much around, and still people who've in our community who don't always feel safe or welcomed crossing that bridge because of its legacy. So then jumping to uh, the not so recent past 1998. I only have a few slides with a bunch of words, but this is the city's land use plan. The city of Milwaukee does a lot of planning. If you live in the city, there's been a plan for your neighborhood in recent years. Sometimes people think plans sit on the shelf, but think this one was really what catalyzed. We always go back to this and say, there had been a number of plans for the valley. Some of them we're really glad didn't happen. One was the big plan was to turn the whole West End into a prison. And there were op-eds supporting that at this time in the 90s, saying we can't hope for anything more than a big federal prison here. But one of the recommendations of that plan was creating a public-private partnership. And so that's how my organization, Menomonee Valley Partners, came to be. And really, I think that's been the strength, is that the city recognized at the time that the work of ahead of the valley was too big for the city to do on its own. It needed other government agencies, it needed private sector businesses, and it really needed community buy-in. And so our mission is really to bring together those voices and achieve those collection of goals to bring jobs back to the valley, recruit companies to restore the land, to create public access to the river, and really make this space that had been a dividing line and that had really felt like no one's neighborhood for a whole generation, really feel like everyone's neighborhood. So now I have a handful of slides that are just some of the before and afters. It's like those old books, like, where can you spot the six differences? So the first section is on infrastructure. Really, the first big effort of the Valley Initiative was rebuilding 6th Street. For those of you who remember, 6th Street was a viaduct, just like 16th, 27th, and 35th. There was one way down to land you at the salt pile and the vacant land by the cement silos. And really, the valley had always been a place to cross over, but not go to. And so it was an idea that that was bold and got a lot of public pushback, but the city really pushed to have 6th Street be this beautiful cable-stayed bridge. This is around the time of the Calatrava. It was just really a beautiful bridge in a place that looked like this. So it was the first time a bridge touched down on the valley floor and made it a place you could go to. At that point, there wasn't much to go to, but there was a vision for that to change. And this is a recent, as you can probably see, Harley Homecoming rally. But this bridge gets so much traffic. It's in a lot of Milwaukee photos, but the bridge is really I'd say what told people something someday there would be something to go to in the valley. And the next big infrastructure initiative was Canal Street. It was actually rebuilt as mitigation for the Marquette Interchange project. So up until 2004, if you were trying to get into your business, you might have to wait for a freight train that was going right down the middle of the street. Um, there were coal piles right along the riverfront. And so that when that was rebuilt, it really changed. There was always the goal of greening the valley, so putting in some medians. And knowing that the neighborhoods surrounding the valley had been really impacted by the really rapid loss of jobs from industry. There's some of the lowest rates of car ownership, higher rates of poverty and unemployment. So if you were hoping to bring back companies and jobs, we knew not everyone from nearby could easily get to them. So having a trail and also a bus line was really important. So at the time Canal Street was being built, that this is the Hank Aaron State Trail that went in at the same time. And once the road was opened, a new bus line was developed. And it was really so that as soon as there were jobs, those jobs would be accessible to people. Um, And then the other piece too was working with those private businesses as they developed. So transitioning into some photos of redevelopment. Most everything along the riverfront was a coal pile. Um, but we knew that there was a goal to connect people to the waterfront. So as new businesses developed, so from this former long vacant coal pile site to this environmental engineering company, to get them to agree to add public access easements along all waterfront properties. So this became part of the Hank Aaron State Trail. Um, as the trail developed in a very urbanized area, it has always was always a hodgepodge. There were like this section of trail behind one property, but more and more starts to connect as there's an opportunity to change hands and land or get someone to give over some public access. For those of you who remember the stockyards, this is where we had cows living with downtown skyline views up until 2005. Um, and then MVP took title to that property and from Cargill, and then developed this as now employs about 200 people with a series of small businesses inside the Canal Commerce Center. This is another former coal yard that's now home to Marquette Fields, and then right across the street from Potawatomi Casino Hotel. Um, the Morton Salt Yards, where right here at this peninsula of lands, if you appreciate water quality, you probably know that having salt piles of land along a freshwater source is not the best thing. But this was where Morton had been for a long time, and then the City of Milwaukee had their a public works yard here too. And so MVP was able to work with some funding we had secured through the state in Potawatomi and purchased from Morton, which they could sell to us as a nonprofit below market rate. And then we later combined that with the city's property to sell it to Harley Davidson Museum, which really took advantage of this entire peninsula and then some to build the world's one and only Harley Davidson Museum campus. One of the most recent developments in the valley has been the transformation of Reed Street yards. So we've had a number of different rail yards in the valley. Reed Street was the very eastern end at right at the border with Walker's Point, just east of 6th Street. And that after the rail yard came out, it had been a trucking facility for a while and just vacant land for a number of years. And in 2021, construction was in full swing for the right height headquarters. So I think that was really a sign. For many years, we've been trying to recruit businesses into the valley, um, and to have a large headquarters come here because they thought this would help them better attract employees, was really a sign that things had changed. But the largest redevelopment in the valley has been the transformation of the Milwaukee Road shop site. So at its heyday, the Milwaukee Road was the third largest rail manufacturer in the country. This was its shop site. Um, there was a roundhouse here that was really iconic, and these chimneys. So the park around it was really built around these chimneys. They stood for some time after this was built until they started spalling bricks. But the goal for this land was really to twofold. One, to bring jobs back and manufacturing jobs that the surrounding community really had a skill set to succeed in, that paid well, above average wages, and that had a high job density. This area is so close to the intersection of our region's two major freeways, so there was always interest in this land being warehousing and distribution. But it's so close to the population center, and it was important to the valley, to the city, to all the partners, that it not just be a logistics hub, but that it really be job creation. And the second piece was green space and water quality. So this is also right along the Menomonee River. So we wanted to create public access to the river, some green space along it, and also manage the water that falls on the site. We've all just lived through a 1,000-year flood. We know how much water can fall. Um, and at the time this was being designed, sewer overflows in the lake were still really happening more often. So this was a lot of MMSD's vision too, uh, com, to have a shared stormwater center. So every property in this business park, a dozen businesses, all send their stormwater here, and it is filtered like the wetlands of the valley would have done historically. So as that developed, the neighborhoods immediately south of it could see these new jobs coming in, could see the new park space developing, but had to walk almost 2 miles around to get to that, because of the railroad tracks that are still there and the river access. Um, Historically, the South Side neighborhood, Silver City, had a pedestrian bridge that you could see here that crossed the Menomonee River, and then a tunnel that went underneath all these rail tracks. I've walked that tunnel. Probably 0 stars. Do not recommend. It was pretty scary. You could touch all sides. And if you're a little taller than me, you probably had to crouch too. But it was very utilitarian and served a purpose. Um, right now, there's only one active line. And so we were able to work with the rail yard to keep that one active line, make it just a little passageway, but have a bridge in the same spot that people historically connected, and really make sure that those residents of the South Side at Silver City could easily access jobs that were available right there, as well as the river and park space. This is what the tunnel looked like from the neighborhood side. It was boarded up, keep out. It was kind of a pit. Literally, things got dumped in there. And then this is it now. It's a switchback trail. Now it's an access point to the Hank Aaron State Trail, and has some really great public art that is really designed to tell you, if you're coming from the valley, what is in the neighborhood, and vice versa, because these areas had been disconnected for so long. And as those connections happened, our next phase was really working on water quality and access to the river. So a lot of the river had very tall sheet pile walls here. This is right by the stadium. So this was in the 90s, and this was about 10 years ago. So you can really see the change in what the river looked like. When we started public meetings about this about 20 years ago, the most common question was like, what river? Is there actually a river down there? Because you couldn't see it from anywhere except on top of the viaducts. There was really no public access to it. But now, with all the land restoration alongside the river, the removal of concrete by MMSD, it's really starting to become more and more vibrant. So these are kids from Urban Ecology Center sampling for macroinvertebrates in the water. And the things that we find really are showing us those are great indicators of water quality, that the health of the river is back, and we're seeing more and more fish and other kinds of critters living in the and near the water. A lot of beavers, some otters spotted here. And similarly, this is in the Central Valley. There was just kind of a turning basin from the days when barges pulled ships upstream on the Menomonee River. There's no commercial shipping on the Menomonee anymore, but just a lot of sediment built up and garbage collected here. So now there's a trash boom to keep things out of the turning basin. There's a canoe launch, kayak launch, and it's really active. Menomonee Valley Partners, just like MCHS does tours with Milwaukee Kayak Company. So if you haven't been out on our rivers, I'd say either one of us would be happy to show you with Milwaukee Kayak Company some of the history of our neighborhoods via the waters. Another piece I just wanted to share was right where that connection was, that switchback trail. That's the trailhead for the Hank Aaron State Trail into the valley. It came up right next to this old abandoned bar. It was also a rooming house for workers of the Milwaukee Road. We bought this lovely bar, and that actually has a really rich history, but worked with Urban Ecology Center to transform it into their Menomonee Valley branch, which really serves as the gateway into the valley, into the park spaces, into the river, a place that really functions as a community living room as well as a environmental center, but where you can borrow snowshoes or fishing poles and any equipment you want to get out and explore nature. And then lastly, I have this transformation image here of Three Bridges Park. So this here is the old airline yards. When this was all the Milwaukee Road, this was its airline yards right here. You can see some of the pedestrian bridges. This is the one that I showed earlier. This is how people historically connected as people. This one here and then one down here were train bridges. When the DOT was rebuilding the Marquette interchange, a lot of the crushed concrete from that site came over to airline yards and was just stockpiled here. In some ways, that was a cost-saving method, not to be trucking all this crushed concrete and material all around the region, but also because there had been this long-term plan to turn this into a park, and to get high enough from this very flat land underneath the 27th Street Viaduct to cross up into Mitchell Park. And so it's really the old Marquette interchange that was graded to make this slight elevation or gradual elevation to get up into Mitchell Park. And then you can't quite tell from this photo, but on the ground you can tell that this is a cane, an esker, a drumlin, that the UWM geology department worked with us to shape these piles of fill and construction highway debris into glacial topography that Urban Ecology Center uses as a teaching tool as students come to learn hands-on in their in an outdoor classroom. And then Three Bridges Park, as well as the whole length of the valley, has the spine of the Hank Aaron State Trail. And that's a really important piece to us, that connectivity. Really, we always say the trail will take you there. The top destinations in Southeast Wisconsin are along the Hank Aaron State Trail, from Discovery World and the Art Museum right by Lakeshore State Park, through the valley, to uh, State Fair Park, and the zoo are all on the Hank Aaron State Trail. So really great to have that off-road access, especially for children. And one of the big pieces was always making sure that this, all of this transformation, especially the building of the parks and trails, was a community effort. So from the earliest, from planting trees and seedlings, we've always wanted to make this feel like everybody's park. And it really has taken thousands of people giving time and effort and planting and weeding to make it so. And I think that's why we have like a good sense of community ownership of the space. So in the 25 years or so since Menomonee Valley Partners has been around, these are some of the, the metrics we use to look at whether the valley effort has been successful. Like 300 acres of formerly contaminated land has been developed. There are more than 70 companies bringing 5,500 good family supporting jobs who've moved here. We have over 1 million feet of green buildings and 60 acres of new parks and trails. And then this community that really no one had reason to come down to before now receives 10 million annual visitors among its destinations. And it's also really had a lot of national attention as well. I think Milwaukee is never really good at patting ourselves on the back, but other cities recognize us. Like the salmon runs in the Menomonee have been recognized in Smithsonian. Landscape Architecture magazine has done a few profiles of the valley and the transformation and the native landscapes. So we do get questions from around the country of people curious about lessons learned from the valley. So a few years back, we hired the Public Policy Forum, now the Wisconsin Policy Forum, to really look at what worked in the valley and why. Like, what is replicable? What could we continue to do here or in other areas of our city or in other parts of the country? So I wanted to just run through some of the lessons learned, because I think that's always important to have those takeaways. What can you do anywhere? And I think one of those big lessons learned was the importance of like really having a robust plan and a roadmap to achieve it. So, this was 120 acres of probably almost 30-year vacant industrial land in the heart of the city. There was an opportunity to just like let the market do what it will, but it was contaminated. It was in a floodplain. That's why it sat. So collectively, we really developed a plan and all the steps to how to get there. So there was a national design competition. We really heard from the community what the goals are, and the goals were jobs, like good paying industrial jobs, and then access to the park space, to the river and creation of park space. So and managing water. So this is our whole stormwater treatment plan. And like what the plan was, this master plan that came out of our design competition is really what happened. So once the site was cleared from all those buildings, then we had this rendering of what we thought we could achieve. And I think what was really innovative for its time, and we haven't seen anyone else really replicate this yet, was the shared stormwater system where every property sends all its stormwater into this collective area. It's designed to hold a 100-year storm event, and with the trails always really being above the water, but other parts being beneath. So this was, unfortunately, we've had more than 100 years storm event since this was built here. But this is exactly what it was designed to do. The main spine of the trail of the Hank Aaron is still above water. These other paths disappear under a 100-year storm event. This holds that whole first flush of rainwater, so it's not entering the river. Nothing ever enters the sewer system or the deep tunnel. And within 2 days, it gradually soaks into to the land and becomes relatively dry land again. Um, and so that's been really effective as a bioretention. We also had a goal of creating almost 1,300 jobs. And so the way to get there was really noting like how much, like what is the average jobs per acre or per 1,000 square feet? What are the average wages for the types of manufacturing industries where we were looking at? And then every time there was a decision to sell land, we checked those against the objectives. And many companies were given options in other places because they just didn't have enough jobs. They weren't good paying jobs but because of that, we were really able to exceed the goal. So this is out of date now because Palermo's has over 1,000 jobs just on Canal Street. But really we're able to ensure that had jobs in the central city, close to where workers lived, and that they're good family supporting jobs. And because of the legacy of contamination of the valley, it was also really important that we showed that this was a sustainable, a green, a healthy place to be. Early on, we got lots of questions about whether it was even safe to be there. Is it all a Superfund site? Would you get sick working down there? And so making sure that whatever developed was sustainable really changed that perception. Some of the buildings you can tell these look like green buildings. Some of them it's more internal, just how efficient they operate, especially for manufacturing. And then the plantings, we have requirements for native landscapes. Not everything that is in the valley is, but all the new developments have been required to do that. And I think it's really led to a much greener and more attractive area. And there's still a lot of work ahead. If you go down there now, there's this site right along the river. If you sit at Twisted Fisherman, this has been where a lot of construction projects have debris, where snow gets piled in the winter. But today was the pre-bid meeting for the first phase of construction to put a new roadway in here and open up 10 acres of land for development. And this is kind of what we're hoping we'll see. Some light industrial land that faces the river, and all this new development here will be required to build Riverwalk. So we now have Riverwalk design standards and an overlay district. So we're hoping hopefully by the end of 2027, we'll all get to take a little walk along the new Menomonee River Walk. Fingers crossed on timing. And then currently also working with MMSD, the city, and the DNR on transforming the Burnham Canal, the southern of the most of the valley's two canals. Here, you can tell this was always a working canal. These are old cement silos, no longer active. This is truck parking backing up to this waterway. But it's part of this larger area of concern cleanup area of concern is an EPA designation. The whole Milwaukee estuary is part of it. So we are currently in the process of a $400 million cleanup effort of all three rivers in the inner harbor, removing the industrial legacy of contaminated sediments with a goal of having fishable, swimmable rivers, and to be the first generation to leave the waters cleaner than we found them. So the Burnham's plan is to become a wetland, kind of revert to what it had been originally. So then the next lesson learned is like the importance of intergovernmental cooperation and public-private partnerships. So really everything I've mentioned today is a cooperative partnership between multiple entities, and we're just kind of the convener. But I wanted to just give a shout out to this one that I don't know if everyone knows. I think I already mentioned it though, but every time you walk through Three Bridges Park or on the Hankin State Trail, everything under the whole Hankin State Trail is the old Marquette interchange. And so all of these landforms are Marquette interchange. But it really kept that fill from going to a landfill and enabled us to create park space. And, another partnership that's new and started in the valley and is being replicated throughout southeast Wisconsin right now, is retrofitting highways for green infrastructure. So even when the Marquette was built 20 years ago, there weren't requirements for green infrastructure, and a lot of the water that stormwater that comes off of these highways just goes right down into the Menomonee River. And so we've been working with DOT, MMSD, City of Milwaukee, DNR, and figured out a way to capture stormwater from all these roadways. And so there's a series of bioretention ponds here, but also some nice public space and trails that wind through here. The other goal, like lesson learned, is addressing multiple community objectives at the same time. I mean, I think the whole goal of the valley is just that. Like, it's not just about economic development. It can't just be about restoring environmental issue, contamination issues, or creating public access, or just about community. But all of those things are intertwined. All of the issues that we have and the challenges we have in our city, we got there through complicated ways, and we have to address them all together. But that enables us to leverage different strengths and different partners to address them. Another lesson was like being really creative with assembling of funding. I think this is like the worst slide ever to see. I'm gonna go line I'm not gonna go line by line, but just a sense of like, this is just like a quarter of the spreadsheet we had from building Three Bridges Park, like every acronym, every source of funding, how it went. But it meant like the federal government, the state government, the city, private sector was all together. But at the end of the day, that was really about like this, creating a space where people could come together and appreciate nature. And then really marketing our region's strengths. We have a great workforce here in Southeast Wisconsin. You could do this on your lunch break in the valley or before work. This is like right behind the stadium. It's an amazing little hidden pocket that not many people know about. And it's a really fun area where people do great things together, where there's a sense of community. I think one of our big lessons learned was really the importance of workforce development. We had thought, jobs will just come back as you bring companies back, but it doesn't work that way. So we've been really intentional in our work with schools and creating that workforce pipeline and mentorship to young people. We have a rotational internship program where students go through various Valley companies just to learn about the job opportunities here, and hopes that they get into good career paths, but also that our smart young people stay in Milwaukee. And then I think the other lessons I always add to the public policies forums are just like the importance of having vision and being willing to take leaps of faith. Like, this is what the Valley looked like 25 years ago. And it took a lot of vision and a lot of leaps of faith to think this is what we could have. And people take risks when other people stand with them and stand behind them. And that the work takes time, but like all those little decisions are important. And so we always say, like, in planting the parks and is like one example that this was just a moonscape that these kids came to, but they planted the first things. And these are like all grown adults, like in their 30s now, but like they feel a sense of ownership. They built our parks. And let's see. Yeah, and now it really is a real community space. And that all these partnerships take time and effort, but they can really lead us far. And I think Milwaukee is a really great example of that. So that's it. And I think we have like 15 minutes for questions.
Yes, we do. And we have questions in the chat. So I will read them off. Corey, first of all, thank you so much. It was such a lovely presentation. And I think you highlighted at the end there really beautifully, like, we get to learn about our communities and learn about our shared history as Milwaukee County in general. But what makes a difference for us now is not just learning about it, but implementing those lessons learned. So I really love that about your presentation. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off with some questions we have from Charles. Wonderful presentation. He says, thank you. When it's time for Q&A, he asks, please speak about the please speak to what work has, I'm so sorry, I'm getting a weird screen fuzzy going on. Please speak to what has worked and not worked to help people overcome homelessness in Milwaukee, specifically in the Menomonee River Valley.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Charles. So I'd say what we have found that's been really working well is the partnership with Milwaukee County's Housing First. They're such a strong partner in that work. And really, like the bottom line, the solution to homelessness is housing. I mean, it feels really simple, but it is there are so many barriers to people getting into housing. So their goal is really to make sure that that housing is available, that it's funded, that people don't need to be sober yet. They don't need to have a job yet. It's really hard to expect someone to do all those things if they don't know where they're going to sleep. We found that it's not as helpful just giving people money or things like just getting them into housing. So I think we have a lot of businesses who have really wanted to engage collectively in how we help that. And so they've given, some can give directly, some people can't give directly to the county, but there's a Key to Change initiative that both pays for down payment or like first month's rent and then move-in kits, everything from sheets and pots and pans, just to get people into a safe place to live where then they can have all the wraparound services that they may need to to be successful. And I'd say if you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to remember the name. It's something like Under the Bridge, something about a bridge, but there's a documentary on on collective responses to addressing homelessness. And Milwaukee County is called out as one of the leaders. We're the largest county of our size to eliminate chronic homelessness.
Definitely something to be proud of, and the work being done is something that we can also consider as members of our community as well, to lend a helping hand in that way. Another question from Mark. He was wondering how the valley fared during the heavy rains this summer. They spoke about the 100-year retention pond, and we had 100-year rain flooding. So could you speak to
Yeah.
that and the new water containment features?
Yeah, that's a great question. It has gotten a lot of so the area that I showed, like the west end of the valley where it's designed to hold that big flood, it worked. It was amazing. So we had a heavy rain, not as big as that in 2008, and I think everyone, or was it 2010? It's one of those years we had that, but like everyone, engineer, planner, construction who had worked on it was there and taking photos from the bridge. Like, did it actually work? And it felt like this August was the exact same thing. I went to see how did the valley fare, and I saw some of those people who I haven't seen in 15 years, that everyone was out there. Did it work? And it worked. But what was really interesting to me from 35th Street, I could see all the businesses, the main spine of the trail, everything was dry. The little parts of the trail were underwater as expected, as planned. The soccer fields were flooded out, but that was what was planned. The stadium, the road around the stadium, there were floating cars. And then at 25th Street, well, between 25th and 27th, there's a rail bridge that crosses the river. It got really jammed up with logs and other debris, and the river just made a new path, and it sent river right down the rail yard, which flooded Potawatomi and Cargill. And you couldn't get out on from Canal Street there. So Cargill workers were trapped overnight. Potawatomi, you couldn't leave via Canal Street. If you were up in the structure, you could come out on the 16th Street Viaduct. I can't remember the number, but over 100 cars were totaled from flooding. They had a lot of first floor offices that were flooded, and their entire storage system was washed out. So a lot of damage there, but pretty amazing that those areas that really had the stormwater management systems in place stayed dry. So, and I think if you also saw Hart Park, that was we've talked about that one a lot as an example, not in the valley, but just a little further upstream, totally flooded out. But I think that's an important thing to remember is like it was designed for that. And because Hart Park was really kind of destroyed, rebuildable, it just meant that homes and businesses weren't washed out. So I mean, I don't want to minimize how many people suffered real catastrophic losses, but all that green infrastructure really helped to make sure that this wasn't as devastating broadly across the community as it would have been otherwise.
Thank you for explaining that. I have a not a question, but a comment from Sean. He's actually seen fly fishermen right near the stadium, and it's just so incredible what to see that transformation just from 30 years ago. It's pretty cool. And Mark even echoed 15 plus years ago, recall the guy carrying a salmon out of the river that was spilling its eggs all over the place as he carried it. So it's definitely that transformation is tangible. Like we can see it, we can all enjoy it. So that's so cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I will also just say it's if you haven't seen them, it's usually late April ish when the steelhead run, and then late September to early October when the salmon run, usually right after a rain. So if you haven't seen what Sean's seen, like it's really something to see someone pull out like a 3.5 foot salmon in a river that's really shallow. So
Yeah.
mark your calendars.
Definitely got to check it out. It's quite the sight to see. Kitty had a question. What boundaries define Menomonee River Valley
Oh
specifically?
yeah. Sorry, I should have said that in the very beginning. On the north side, it's I-94. That's our boundary with the near west side. On the west side, it is the stadium. The east side, it's the confluence of the rivers, Milwaukee, Menomonee, like really close to the Harley Davidson Museum, MMSD, as landmarks. And then the south is basically follows the train tracks
Mhm.
where the historic bluffs of the valley were. So maybe Pierce Street would be the best sort of landmark. Yeah.
Sure. And then not a question, but a thank you from Lindsay very much for exploring and explaining the challenges and successes in the area we all see, but maybe have taken for granted. So it's a good reminder to be like there are lessons to be learned from the developments we make in our neighborhoods, and also a good reminder to go enjoy those spaces as well.
Yeah.
And then a question from Jim. He said this has been very illuminated. Thank you. Question: do you know of any plans to develop restaurants and other light consumer retail to support the people who are working in this area?
Yeah. Thanks. That's always something people would like more of. And we haven't really had too many people do that yet. I mean, we after COVID, Palermo's closed its cafe, really because they needed that space for production. But that was always a really popular spot. Otherwise, there's Sobelman's Twisted Fisherman, which has some nice domes up for the winter, so a nice place to check out. Um, Third Space, Motor at the Harley Davidson Museum, and Lombardi Brewing just opened in what was City Lights Brewery until recently. Potawatomi has a number of dining features. We're also hoping that when the land that I just mentioned is should be starting construction along the river. Hopefully, will be done, have something moving in 2027. We think that would be an ideal spot for some sort of food and beverage. Having new access on the river with a river walk, like something that really activates that space. So, right now, nothing imminent. In the future, maybe. Um, and I think there's still a lot of opportunity yet to come as more people move down there for jobs, that more things will happen. And then in the meantime, we always encourage people to check out the neighborhoods surrounding, like in the near west side, Silver City, Walker's Point. It's close, but yeah, nothing imminent for the valley just yet.
Well, and hey, just the work that's been done in the last 30 years, like we've been saying, it's been so monumental, and it's only up from there, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Last call for questions, everybody. Otherwise, we'll close out. a second.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. It was so nice to get to talk to people today.
Yeah, it was so great and like communicating with everybody. So thank you very much. It's really a great opportunity for us to all come together and really explore this history in a way that's digestible, but also a way that we can impact the work that's being done in the community. It looks like Kitty was interested on anything on Pigsville, so maybe a little
Oh,
blurb about Pigsville, or if you have a recommended resource.
yeah. Well, I would say check out the Valley Inn in Pigsville. That's
Mhm.
like that's another place that lots of Valley people go to eat. Um, and some I know that there's some new plantings coming like near the levee there, because there's been work on the whole levee system on the Menomonee River. So that's coming. I don't know anything else, other news in Pigsville, but it's such a I love that neighborhood.
I do
It's
too.
just
Yeah,
like a fascinating little pocket.
it is. It definitely is. So we'll all have to keep our eyes peeled on that one.
Yeah.
Jeff, question I think is for me. Will this presentation be available for streaming? We will have it on our YouTube page coming December 1st. So we record our presentations for folks who can't join us or they want to watch again because they just loved it so much. So this will be on the MCHS's YouTube page coming December 1st. So once the season of our virtual programming series wraps, I add all of the recordings from this past season to our YouTube page. So you can take a look out for that as well.
Great.
All right.
Maybe I'll just give a shout out if anyone wants to come and explore the Valley more. We have a lot
Yes.
of annual events. Like let's see, nothing imminent in the next month, but in February, it's always I don't know the date off the top of my head, but closest Saturday to the full moon in February, we have a candlelight hike through Three Bridges Park and the Hank Aaron State Trail. There's cocoa, fires, s'mores. It's amazing to see how many people will come out on a cold night and walk through the city. So come for that. There's always the Earth Day cleanup in April, the Hank Aaron State Trail Run Walk in August. And we have a whole week of events for Valley Week, which is always in mid-September. It's a great chance to get out and see the valley from the water. We do boat tours. We do kayak tours as well if you want to work for it, but boat tours with a happy hour cocktail if you just want to sit back and enjoy. And then we have a lot of other events. So there's always something family friendly, always something workforce related. If you know anyone looking for a job, just really want to show off all the different parts of the valley. And then in the summer, we do once a month kayak tours with Milwaukee Kayak Company. And then the Funk Wagon, which has music on a barge, which if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's a great way. Like if you're ever trying to recruit someone to Milwaukee, have them come then and just kayak
Totally.
down our rivers with 100 people listening to music. It's really
Yeah,
great. So
it's very cool. And I will have the Menomonee Valley Partners website linked in the chat. I'll send that right now. And definitely check them out, support them. They're our community orgs, and we love to work together and uplift one another. So definitely do that. Celebrating our neighborhoods is one way that we can both revitalize our community, share, gather together, but also, you know, maintain that cool history of everything that has been done and will continue to be. So thank you everybody for attending today. That's our program. And thank you so much, Corey, for a wonderful presentation. Truly, it was fantastic. We really enjoyed it. And I would like to invite you guys. We have a couple upcoming events ourselves. This weekend is our major annual book sale. So not collection items, copies, and duplicates of books that we have in our archives are for sale, as well as prints. And we'd like to encourage you guys to come on out. We are also starting our food drive in partnership with Hunger Task Force on Saturday, and that goes from November 15th, Saturday, to Saturday, November 22nd. If you bring a non-perishable donation, you get free admission into the museum. So I really encourage you guys to come on down, plan your visit, and you get to do something good for your community too. I think I sent it in the chat, our little survey. So please let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, I'll send the survey in a follow-up email as well. We can make our programs better, and we always like your consideration and your thoughts on how we could do that. And if you'd like to see more programs like this one, please consider supporting the Milwaukee County Historical Society. We recognize that Milwaukee's history spans across diverse communities, ethnicities, and cultures. So we hope to continue bringing each other together through these programs. And with that, thank you again, Corey. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And we will have our next season of the virtual Lunch and Learn programs coming back in February. So keep an eye on our social medias, our website, and our e-newsletter if you're not subscribed for more details on that. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.